The morning fog hung thick over Willow Creek, a sleepy town tucked between rolling hills and dense forests, the kind of place where everyone knew your business, and everyone's business felt like a story waiting to be told. I had been fishing here since I was 12, a ritual passed down from my father, who'd always said the lake had a soul, and it deserved respect. But as I trudged down the muddy path toward the water that morning, my boots sinking slightly with every step, I sensed that the calm of the lake was a lie. The air smelled faintly metallic, the kind of scent that makes your stomach tighten before you even know why. I paused, glancing at the glassy surface, hoping it was just my imagination. But the fish weren't jumping today. Not a single ripple broke the mirror-like calm of the water. That's when I noticed it, an unnatural sheen, a rainbow of colors streaking across the surface, shimmering in a way that was both mesmerizing and menacing. I cursed under my breath. I knew immediately, someone had done something. Someone with access. Someone who hated my presence at this lake. And my mind went straight to Karen Whitmore, the president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, a woman who had treated me like a nuisance ever since I moved here 5 years ago. She was notorious for her petty vendettas and self-righteous crusades. And lately, she'd been making it abundantly clear she wanted me gone. I had hoped she'd only block my dock access or maybe file some ridiculous complaint. But poisoning the lake? That was next level insane. And worse, I realized it before anyone else did. Willow Creek didn't just live off the lake for leisure. The entire town's water supply came from here. My heart hammered as the weight of that thought sank in. If she had succeeded, everyone downstream, hundreds, maybe thousands, could be in danger. Matt, a voice called from behind me. I turned to see my neighbor, Jamie Reynolds, jogging up the path. She was petite but had an energy that made her impossible to ignore, always moving like she was about to uncover a secret. What is it? You look pale. I swallowed hard. It's the lake, something's in it. Poison, maybe. Karen. She did something. My voice shook more than I wanted. Jamie's eyes widened. What? Are you serious? I nodded. We need to warn the town. Now. By the time we made it back to my house, the phone lines were already buzzing with chaos. Calls from concerned residents, rumors spreading faster than wildfire. Karen's name wasn't mentioned yet, no one wanted to believe that someone in the HOA could do something so malicious. But I knew the truth. I had to act before it got worse. I grabbed my laptop, pulling up the town's water management system. The lake fed directly into the reservoir, then through a network of pipes to every home in Willow Creek. One misstep, and the town could face a disaster. I needed evidence, proof that Karen had done this intentionally. I drove down to her estate, a sprawling property at the edge of town, manicured lawns gleaming under the morning sun. Karen was outside, glaring at me from her front porch, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the light, her hands on her hips like a queen surveying her domain. Matt Parker, she said sharply. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you about the lake, I said. My voice was steady, more so than I felt. It's contaminated. People's water is at risk. Did you put something in it? She gasped, clutching her chest. How dare you? That is preposterous. I have done nothing of the sort. Her eyes darted nervously, though, betraying a flicker of fear. Karen, I said, lowering my voice. This isn't about fishing anymore. This is serious. If you did this, it's not just illegal, it's deadly. She scoffed, masking the panic with indignation. I would never. I just didn't want you fishing there anymore. That's all. Her words were absurd, but I could see it, the fleeting panic, the way her fingers trembled. She had underestimated the consequences. And now, the entire town might pay the price for her selfishness. I left her estate, storming back toward the lake with Jamie following closely. I needed samples, evidence. Gloves on, I waded into the water, scooping the thick, rainbow-tinted liquid into a jar. It smelled like chemicals, pungent and foul, the kind that made your throat close up. I labeled it and drove straight to Dr. Leonard Hayes, a retired chemist who had once taught at the state university. "Matt," Leonard said, peering at the sample through thick glasses, "this is bad. Really bad. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. This isn't just a surface contaminant, it's a potent toxin. If it spreads, it'll poison the town's water supply within hours." My stomach turned. "Do we have time to warn them?" Leonard shook his head. "You need to alert the authorities. And soon." By the time we called the police, word had already leaked. Panic was spreading through the town. People were evacuating, kids were being pulled from schools, and the fire department was mobilized to set up emergency water distribution. And all the while, Karen Whitmore remained oblivious to the scale of the disaster she had triggered. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, I stood at the edge of the lake, staring at the shimmering poison, feeling both dread and a grim resolve. This wasn't just about fishing anymore. It was about saving lives and holding a reckless, vindictive woman accountable for her actions. And deep down, I knew that what came next would change Willow Creek forever. By the time the sun fully set over Willow Creek, the town had descended into chaos. Emergency sirens echoed through narrow streets, and the normally quiet neighbors hurried to fill buckets, bathtubs, and bottles from temporary water trucks stationed at the town square. Families huddled together in their kitchens, the air thick with fear. I drove past the crowd, my heart pounding, realizing just how close we had come to catastrophe. Jamie was riding shotgun, her hands clenching the dashboard, eyes darting from the streets to me. "Matt, you think anyone will really believe Karen did this?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but there was an edge of desperation. "They will," I said firmly. "Once the evidence comes back from the lab, there's no way she can weasel out. She doesn't even know what she's unleashed yet. She underestimated the lake and she underestimated me." We pulled up to the temporary water testing station, where Dr. Leonard Hayes and several emergency responders were working in tense silence. The samples we brought earlier were being run through a series of tests under bright, buzzing fluorescent lights. Leonard looked up as we approached, a grim expression etched on his face. "It's worse than I thought," he said, voice low. "The toxin spreads faster than I anticipated. It's soluble, highly reactive. If it reaches the reservoir fully, we're looking at days of water being undrinkable. And the thing is, it's not just humans. Livestock, wildlife, the entire ecosystem is at risk." I clenched my fists. "Do we have any way to neutralize it?" Leonard shook his head slowly. "Not in time. The only thing we can do is stop more of it from entering the lake. Whoever did this, they need to be stopped physically. Right now." My stomach dropped. Karen. The realization hit me with cold certainty. She had no idea she had poisoned more than just my fishing spot. She had poisoned Willow Creek itself. I drove back toward the lake, heart hammering, Jamie beside me. The mist had returned, curling around the trees like ghostly fingers. The water shimmered eerily under the moonlight, the surface still rainbow-colored, reflecting the chaos we were trying to contain. And there she was, Karen Whitmore, standing at the dock, holding a bottle of some chemical, her face a mixture of defiance and panic. "Karen!" I yelled, skidding to a stop. "Stop! Put it down!" Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw the panic flicker again. I didn't mean," she stammered, "but I wasn't having it." "You didn't mean to poison the town? Do you even realize what you've done?" My voice cracked with anger. "This isn't about fishing anymore. People could die." Her hand trembled on the bottle. I just wanted him gone," she cried, pointing vaguely toward the lake. "Matt! You're always in everyone's way. I didn't think." "That's enough!" I shouted. In one swift move, I lunged and grabbed the bottle from her, tossing it into the water. A small splash erupted as the chemical hit the already poisoned lake, and I felt a chill run down my spine. We were already too late, but at least we prevented more from being added. Jamie stepped forward. "We need to call the police," she said firmly. "She's clearly unstable." I nodded, pulling out my phone. But Karen wasn't done. Her voice rose in hysteria. "You don't understand. The HOA, they'll ruin me if I get caught. They'll." Before she could finish, the distant sound of sirens grew louder. Police vehicles approached, lights flashing, their engines slicing through the mist. Karen's face paled, and she dropped to her knees, clutching her chest as if she might collapse. 2 officers ran up, weapons drawn but restrained. "Karen Whitmore, step away from the water," one barked. "You're under arrest for attempted poisoning and reckless endangerment." She shook her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to." "It doesn't matter what you meant," I said, voice tight with fury. "You endangered everyone here. Your selfishness could have killed them all." The officers handcuffed her, reading her rights as she screamed and struggled, the mist swirling around her like a veil of retribution. I stood frozen for a moment, the adrenaline fading, replaced by exhaustion and a deep, gnawing fear. The lake shimmered behind her, toxic and silent, a reminder of what had almost been. "Matt, what now?" Jamie asked softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. I looked at the lake, then at the emergency crews testing and treating the water. "Now, we fix it. We clean it up. And we make sure this never happens again." Over the next several hours, the town rallied. Firefighters and volunteers deployed absorbent barriers along the streams feeding the reservoir. Chemical neutralizers were carefully applied under Leonard's guidance, slowing the spread of the toxin. Families waited anxiously for updates, the tension in the air thick enough to choke on. By dawn, there was cautious optimism. Water samples indicated that while damage had been done, it hadn't reached a critical level downstream. The emergency water supply remained necessary for safety, but the worst-case scenario had been avoided. I stood once more at the edge of the lake, exhausted but relieved, watching the first light of morning glint across the water. Karen Whitmore was gone, taken into custody, her reign of petty terror finally over. But the memory of her poison shimmering across the lake's surface, the knowledge of how close we had come to disaster, would linger forever. Jamie rested her head on my shoulder. "You saved the town," she said quietly. "I didn't do it alone," I replied, eyes fixed on the horizon. "And it's not over yet. The lake, this town, we need to heal. And that means making sure something like this never happens again." As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the lake and the town slowly coming back to life, I knew that Willow Creek would remember this day forever. And while Karen's shadow might linger in whispers, her control over our lives was finally gone. But deep down, a part of me couldn't shake the fear. The lake had been a silent, fragile heart of the town, and now, exposed, it had secrets we didn't fully understand. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of Willow Creek, danger still waited. The days after the poisoning incident passed in a tense, surreal blur. Willow Creek slowly emerged from chaos, but the town's heartbeat remained uneven, like a drum with a cracked skin. People returned cautiously to their homes, their eyes still darting toward the lake, the once trusted source of life now tainted in memory if not in substance. I spent most of the mornings and evenings at the water's edge, wearing gloves, goggles, and boots, assisting Leonard Hayes and the volunteers as they tested water, treated soil near the shoreline, and monitored wildlife for signs of lingering toxins. The process was painstaking, but it was necessary. I couldn't let Karen's reckless actions become the town's permanent scar. Jamie often joined me, carrying supplies, offering coffee, or just sharing quiet moments as we watched the lake. I realized, through her presence, that even in tragedy, bonds could be strengthened. Willow Creek had survived, yes, but it had survived together, and that realization offered a strange, fragile kind of hope. Meanwhile, Karen Whitmore's trial began. News crews flocked to Willow Creek, filling the town square with cameras, lights, and microphones. The case became national news, a homeowners association horror, they called it. But the town's focus wasn't sensationalism, it was justice. And I made it my mission to ensure Karen faced the full measure of accountability. The courtroom was packed the day I testified. Karen sat at the defendant's table, her hair still perfectly styled, but her eyes betrayed fear, humiliation, and defiance. I walked to the stand, heart-hammering, and recounted every detail, her petty vendetta, her deliberate poisoning, the ripple effects it had nearly unleashed. The jury listened intently, taking notes as if each word could tip the balance between safety and disaster. She didn't just act out of spite, I told them, voice steady despite the memories flooding back. She acted with complete disregard for life, human, animal, and environmental. The lake is the lifeblood of Willow Creek. Without it, we would not survive. And she tried to destroy that lifeblood for her own selfish reasons. When I finished, I caught Jamie's eye in the back of the room. She gave me a small, encouraging nod. I had never been good with public speaking, but the gravity of the situation forced clarity into my voice. I had no room for hesitation. Karen's defense tried to claim negligence, an accident, even temporary insanity, but the evidence was overwhelming. The chemical traces, the eyewitness accounts, the timing, it all pointed directly to her intentional actions. By the final day of the trial, the jury had no doubt. She had endangered an entire town to satisfy a personal grudge. When the verdict came, it was swift and merciless, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Karen to a lengthy prison term, with heavy fines and community service, including environmental restoration work under supervision. There was no sympathy for her, no leniency, only justice. As she was led away in handcuffs, her eyes met mine briefly. There was no apology, no remorse, only a flicker of recognition that she had lost. I didn't feel triumph, only relief. The town was safe again. And for once, selfish cruelty had consequences. Back at the lake, Willow Creek slowly returned to life. Children tentatively dipped toes into the water, fishermen cautiously cast lines, and families picnicked along the shore. Signs were posted reminding everyone of the lake's importance, not just as a recreational space but as the town's lifeline. I watched the reflection of the rising sun shimmer across the surface and felt something I hadn't felt since childhood, a sense of belonging and peace. Jamie joined me, handing me a bottle of water. "To the lake," she said with a soft smile. "And to surviving Karen." I laughed quietly, clinking the bottle against hers. "To surviving Karen," I repeated. "And to never taking this place for granted again." The weeks turned into months, and Willow Creek healed. Wildlife returned, the water supply stabilized, and the town commemorated the near tragedy with a small festival celebrating community resilience. I gave speeches, helped organize cleanups, and spent quiet mornings on the dock, fishing in the same spot my father once taught me to cast a line. And every time I cast my rod, I remembered the fragility of life and the ripple effects of choices. One selfish act had nearly destroyed an entire town. But together, we had turned a disaster into a story of survival, accountability, and hope. Karen Whitmore became a cautionary tale, whispered in town lore, a reminder that power, arrogance, and cruelty have consequences. But Willow Creek's story, our story, was one of courage, community, and a deep, unbreakable bond with the lake that had almost been lost. Standing at the water's edge one evening, Jamie leaning against my shoulder, I watched the sun set in blazing orange and gold across the lake. The water shimmered, alive and vibrant, reflecting not just the sky but the resilience of the people who depended on it. And I knew, without a doubt, that no one, no petty tyrant, no HOA queen, no act of malice, could ever break the spirit of Willow Creek. Not while we still stood together, guarding our home, our water, and each other. The lake had survived. The town had survived. And so had we.